If you feel like you are working harder than ever and getting less in return, you are not imagining it. This feeling is spreading across developed economies, especially in the United States. People are putting in more hours, juggling multiple responsibilities, constantly upgrading skills, yet the sense of progress is fading. Effort no longer translates into stability, let alone prosperity. And that leads to a fundamental question. Why is working harder no longer working? For most of the 20th century, the relationship between effort and reward was relatively clear. Work more, gain experience, earn more, build security over time. That logic shaped entire generations. It created expectations around careers, home ownership, retirement, and upward mobility. But that system depended on conditions that no longer exist. Productivity gains were broadly shared, costs grew slowly, and institutions absorbed risk. Today, those foundations have shifted. The core reason working harder no longer works is that individual effort has become disconnected from systemic outcomes. You can increase your personal productivity, but if the system absorbs the gains, your progress stalls. In modern economies, especially highly financialized ones, efficiency gains do not automatically translate into higher wages. They translate into higher margins, higher asset prices, and greater concentration of wealth. One major factor is wage stagnation relative to productivity. For decades, productivity has continued to rise, but wages have not kept pace. Workers produce more value per hour, but the share of that value captured through labor income has declined. The extra output does not disappear, it flows upward into capital, executives, shareholders, and financial markets. From the worker's perspective, effort increases, but rewards flatten. At the same time, the cost of basic necessities has risen faster than wages. Housing, healthcare, education, insurance, and childcare absorb a growing share of income. These are not optional upgrades, they are requirements to participate in modern life. As these costs rise, the threshold for getting ahead moves further away. Working harder becomes a strategy to maintain position, not to advance. Another critical shift is the erosion of job security. Careers used to provide long-term stability. Today, jobs are more fragile, contracts are shorter, and benefits are weaker. Workers are expected to be flexible, adaptable, and constantly available, but without reciprocal guarantees. This forces people to work harder, simply to reduce the risk of replacement. Effort becomes defensive rather than progressive. The rise of performance-based work has also changed incentives. Many roles now demand constant output measurement, availability, and responsiveness. Metrics replace trust, speed replaces depth. This creates a paradox. People work more intensely, but burnout increases and long-term value creation declines. Hard work is fragmented into short-term tasks that benefit systems optimized for immediacy, not for sustainable growth. Debt amplifies this dynamic. As wages fail to keep up with costs, debt fills the gap. Student loans, credit cards, mortgages, and consumer financing allow people to sustain a lifestyle that work alone no longer supports. This creates a trap. Workers must continue working harder to service obligations created by the failure of work to provide sufficient income in the first place. Future effort is already spoken for. Another overlooked factor is that the economy increasingly rewards ownership rather than labor. Asset holders benefit from rising markets, while workers depend on income that grows slowly. If you do not own appreciating assets, working harder has diminishing returns. This system structurally favors capital over effort. This is not a moral judgment, it is a structural reality. Technology also plays a role. While innovation increases efficiency, it often reduces bargaining power. Automation, outsourcing, and global competition place downward pressure on wages while increasing expectations. Workers compete not only with peers, but with systems designed to replace them. In this environment, working harder does not improve leverage, it often accelerates exhaustion. Psychologically, this creates confusion and frustration. People internalize failure. They assume they are not doing enough, not trying hard enough, not optimizing correctly. The system benefits from this narrative. If failure is individual, structure remains unquestioned. But when millions experience the same outcome, the cause is not personal, it is systemic. The most dangerous part of this shift is normalization. Over time, people adjust expectations. Delayed home ownership becomes normal. Permanent debt becomes normal. Job insecurity becomes normal. Working harder without getting ahead becomes normal. When this happens, the system stabilizes around stagnation. This does not mean effort is useless. It means effort alone is insufficient. The mistake is applying a linear strategy to a non-linear system. Working harder made sense when gains were shared and costs were manageable. In a system where gains are absorbed and costs escalate, effort must be paired with strategy, leverage, and protection. The real issue is not that people stopped working hard. It is that hard work is no longer the primary driver of upward mobility. Without ownership, margin, or insulation from systemic costs, effort becomes maintenance. You work to stay functional, not to advance. This is why many people feel trapped despite doing everything they were told to do. They followed the rules of a game that changed without notice. The rules rewarded behaviors that no longer delivers the same outcomes. The key question is not whether you should work harder. The question is where your effort flows, who captures its value, and whether your work is building resilience or merely sustaining participation in an increasingly expensive system. Until that question is addressed, working harder will continue to feel futile. Not because effort lost value, but because the system changed how value is distributed. In the next video, we will talk about the lie of financial stability and why the traditional idea of playing it safe often increases vulnerability in modern economies. Because understanding why working harder no longer works is the first step to changing how you operate within the system. If this analysis helped you see the economy more clearly, subscribe to the channel. Here, we focus on structure, incentives, and long-term reality, not motivational slogans.